I want to say that I had a very successful and fruitful mission in the United States over the past week. I visited the offices in New York, Washington, Atlanta, and Miami, as promised, and met with the officials at the United States State Department on Wednesday of last week. At each stop, I took the opportunity to apprise the staff of the changes in our diplomatic missions and the new leadership there. I introduced the new ambassadors to their respective staffs, and I thank them for their support of the government and its work over the past 1.5 years since we have, or almost 1.5 years since we've been back in office. I'm happy to report that the patriotism and love of our country continues strong amongst them. Today, as promised, a delegation leaves the Bahamas, headed by the Permanent Secretary Philip Miller and the Commodore of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Roderick Bowe, to Havana, Cuba, to begin talks on the modalities of a more efficient return of Cuban migrants to their home country. This is part of the initiative approved by the Cabinet and which we announced shortly before my departure last week. I plan to have discussions directly with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Cuba in Grenada during the course of this week. I want to say with regard to migration matters that I am pleased with the progress that has been made thus far in resolving all the outstanding matters that have so exercised the public over the last weeks. And I want to thank again publicly the Consul General, Ricardo Trico, the Deputy Consul General, Sandra Carey, and all the staff in Miami for their hard work and dedication during a stressful and provocative period. The promised demonstration in Miami on Friday last fizzled, and work went ahead unhindered as it has during this whole matter. So once again, I reaffirm my commitment and dedication to our country and its institutions and to the processes, and I thank all true-blooded Bahamians for their full and continued support of the policies which we are pursuing to protect the country from harm. Thank you. Any questions?
In relation to the leaked report that came out, when it detailed, I guess, all the different steps and the dates, when did you find out about what was contained in that report?
I told your colleagues, I'm not commenting on something that is not a complete investigation. It is when the investigation is complete, the reports, to the extent that they can be made available, will be made available. And that's all I have to say on those things. Not commenting on stuff that I don't know the authenticity of it, I don't know the truth or otherwise of it.
Do you think it's, I mean, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but do you think the leak will have any impact on the investigation going forward?
I suppose I shouldn't speculate on that either, except that my public comment on this as a generality was that one has to be very careful about putting tendentious and prejudicial information in advance out into the public. If I were a defense lawyer and something arose out of this, I would have a field day with it. That's the best I could say.
What about, I guess, in terms of, let's say when a murder happens, police will release basic details. Why, I guess the question is, why weren't basic details released about, I guess, such a incident? And wouldn't that not affect any sort of investigation? Do you get what I'm trying to ask?
I get what you're trying to ask, but the facts are what they are, and I can't go beyond that at all. Yeah.
What is the Bahamas' relationship with Cuba now since this stream of events?
There's been no interruption in the state of relations between Cuba and ourselves, and none between ourselves and the United States. As I tried to indicate, this is, in my view, very much a local dispute confined to South Florida, which is designed to rattle the cages of Bahamians. Most Bahamians ignored it and supported the fact of the government's position on this, which is if people do something which is unlawful or which amounts to disciplinary action or causes disciplinary action, those individuals will be tested either by a disciplinary panel or by some form of action, whatever that action should be. Until those processes work their way out, there's no reason for us to be unpatriotic and linking arms with people who are trying to do harm to our country overseas, and that's what it boils down to.
The Protest for Democracy movement on Friday, they wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. I don't know if they were able to deliver it to the consulate, but they were asking the Prime Minister to take action on whatever happens or whatever the report concludes.
Yeah, again, I'm always loath to dignify what they say or do by any form of comment. I think it's outrageous what they've said about our country. My role as the chief diplomat of the Bahamas is to defend this country's reputation, and that's what I do. I'm unapologetic about it, and those who want to apologize for it, like the leader of the opposition seems to want to do, fine, that's their role. My role is to defend the country as long as I have this role.
When you meet with Cuban officials and the delegation that is leaving, are there any other issues besides immigration that you hope to address?
Well, I would raise a whole range of issues, but for example, there's oil drilling that may take place in the border regions between ourselves and themselves, so I'm sure that I take the opportunity to raise that subject. The Minister for the Environment has been to Cuba to discuss that issue with them. The processes are moving on here on that issue, so I'm sure that would be one of the subjects we are likely to discuss. But the specific thing that's being dealt with now, this team that's going to Cuba, is in 1998, the then government signed a protocol with the Cuban government, which would have allowed the direct repatriation in a short space of time for Cuban migrants found in this country back to Cuba. There were some modalities that were supposed to be settled as to how that should be done. Who are the agencies, what are the executing forms, and all the rest of that. That was never done from 1998 to the present. We discovered that recently, and we indicated to them that that's what we'd like to do, is we'd like to get that set up. Because part of the issue here is that, that people simply are in these detention facilities for too long. And of course, that we are doing work to improve and upgrade the facility. So that there aren't these allegations of the actual conditions themselves arising.
Where are we, I guess, in the investigation into the abuse allegations, or is it close to being done?
I think a time frame was announced before I left, and I've not seen anything to indicate a deviation from that time frame, so I just stick with that. Largely now, the international side of the government is actually near the end of its work on this. This becomes a matter for the domestic side of the government, which would be I would suppose the OAG and the Ministry of National Security, because those are the agencies, of course, that are involved in law enforcement. So.
Do you see this going to court? Because I know it was supposed to be under review by a retired justice or something that was going to be the next step. Is it going to court at all, or?
I don't want to speculate beyond that. No.
Do you know of any other countries aside from the Bahamas and Cuba that is interested in the report, or was the situation that's happening at these days?
No, I don't. But you know that during the Universal Periodic Review, the questions arose about, which takes place on a regular basis. I think they may be every 5 years or so, where the country has to appear in Geneva. And all of the countries that are on the United Nations Human Rights Commission, they go over our human rights record. And the detention center has always been an issue, as has been the prison. Also, annually, the United States government does a human rights report, which also gets some traction here in the Bahamas. So I think those are the only other people that I see have when you talk about nations that have been directly involved in any comment on it. Yeah.
I guess, claims of abuse at the detention center seem to range back to 1998 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the FNM has been criticizing you mercilessly about this. What is the government going to do differently in light of this?
I think we've already laid it out. We've said that improvements will be made at the facility. We've indicated that this report will be done. As I said, I can't on my own decide whether reports are public or not, but I think the Prime Minister's already indicated that his inclination is for the reports, to the extent that they can be made public, they will be. But insofar as the thing about the opposition, this is a group of very desperate people at the moment. They're down on their political fortunes. Their leader is in political trouble. And he's making himself look most unintelligent by seeking to link this call to these events to a call for resignation, because all he has to do is examine the facts and he can show that there's no nexus between what he is saying and my conduct. And I find it simply outrageous. But, you know, if he wishes to try and make political fodder out of it, one of the reasons why I asked all of you to come here is because I want you all to look me straight in the eyes, right? Look me straight in the eyes and say, what he says, what they say, has no impact on me whatsoever. My role is to defend this country, and I'm defending this country to the best of my powers. And I thank the people who have supported me and support the government's position in this. Justice, whatever it is, will be done, and the chips, as the statement says, will fall where they may.